As a franchise goes on, it's not unusual for it to completely change the manner in which it portrays itself. Take, for example, Harry Potter. While Sorcerer's Stone is generally seen as a pretty lighthearted kids book, the fourth book of the series, Goblet of Fire, ramps up the violence and raises the stakes as Harry competes in a dangerous tournament, eventually leading up to the murder of one of the students in the climax of the book. As the characters continue to mature, the stories get progressively darker and deal with heavier themes of death and loss, culminating in the final book of the series, Deathly Hallows, which is somewhat of a bloodbath, killing off a large number of characters in a short span of time. This change is referred to as a tonal shift. Sometimes, a tonal shift can play out like Harry Potter, where as the threats become more realistic, the story matures and takes itself more seriously. Sometimes the shift happens in the opposite direction, and a franchise or series will begin to take itself less seriously, becoming lighter in tone. Sometimes a tonal shift can occur in both directions at different points in the franchise. I think it's generally pretty safe to say that the longer a franchise goes on for, the more likely it is to experience more tonal shifts, simply because there's more room for the shifts to occur. To differentiate between the two distinctly different types of tonal shift, we'll refer to one as lighter and softer, and the other as darker and edgier. This video specifically will be focusing on the second one. While darker and edgier can certainly be executed well to a great effect, it is not uncommon to be done poorly, as noted by TV tropes. It is really easy for creators intending for their work to be darker to accidentally create a case of mood whiplash, or to be dark only on a superficial level, such as by dumping excessive swear words on an otherwise light franchise.
With the power of these emeralds, I'm going to destroy this damn planet.
Today, we're going to be taking a look at a franchise that has a shining example of how it transitioned a colorful cast of kid-friendly characters into a darker, more mature world. Running for more than 50 years and constantly dealing with the supernatural, it's no shock to anyone that Scooby Doo has gone through various tonal shifts. And while some of these shifts have been generally well received, others not so much. But there's one example of a tonal shift that I feel stands above the rest, and that is the film Scooby Doo on Zombie Island. Hello everyone, my name is Fabulous Fish, and welcome to the Fishbowl. Scooby Doo on Zombie Island, often regarded as the pinnacle of Scooby Doo media. This might sound kind of weird, but I actually don't have a whole lot of nostalgia for this movie. I was 4 years old when I first saw Zombie Island, and it frightened me so much that I decided I never want to watch the movie again. I even made my dad tape over a bootleg VHS of the movie because it traumatized me just so darn much. My perception on the film completely changed when I decided to rewatch it in high school, and I got to sit down and really appreciate the genius of the film for the first time. Is it the greatest movie of all time? God no, not even close. But it does an excellent job of taking such innocent children's characters and letting them explore a darker, more adult world. Just exactly how does it do this? Let's jump right in and find out. One of the biggest things this film does right is demonstrates respect for the source material. What I mean by that is right from the opening scene, you can tell the team behind these movies were fans of the original Scooby Doo and could tell exactly what made it work. The film opens cheesy as ever, with some panning shots of a spooky castle during a thunderstorm. And cheesy though it may be, it's hard to deny here that the animation looks great. This film was animated by a Japanese studio called Mook Animation, and they did a great job of bringing the darker palettes of the original Scooby Doo into a more detailed style. From here the film starts, as we see a monster chasing the Scooby Doo gang around the creepy castle. I really like how you don't see the monster at first, only seeing its arms or its shadows along the walls. It does a great job of building up suspense. When it is finally revealed, the monster is admittedly a lot more intense looking than anything I remember from the show. That said, they do a good job of keeping it from being too much all at once, with some cute comedic touches, such as how the doorknob bounces on the monster's head when Shaggy throws it. It's so funny.
Scooby Doo, where are you?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is the first time the series has done a remix of the original theme song since the second season of the show about 30 years earlier. It serves as a nice throwback to the musical chase sequences of the show, and it's a clever touch to actually use the Scooby Doo theme here. But this scene actually has a hidden purpose to it. This scene is subtly preparing you for the tone of the rest of the film. Watch this chase scene closely and you'll notice how the monster appears to be a little more violent and destructive than the monsters from the show.
I hate rugs. I hate shields. I hate friends.
The scenarios are a lot more life and death in this chase. Like, look at how he almost takes their fucking heads off.
I hate windows.
But the film is smart enough not to just throw you into all the chaos at once. Notice how it also sprinkles in some slapstick and other jokes along the way. I especially love how they play with the infamous Scooby Doo doors gag from the show.
Now how the fuck did they get over there?
By just slightly ramping up the violence and keeping the comedy still intact, the scene does an excellent job of getting you ready for how the rest of the movie is going to be. At the end of the scene, they capture the monster and unmask the bad guy, making sure that any viewers unfamiliar with how Scooby Doo works understands the basic premise of the show. These characters are paranormal investigators who specialize in debunking fake ghosts. We also get to hear the gang speak for the first time here.
Like, it's Mr. Beeman, the real estate agent.
Shaggy is played by Bill West in this film, since Shaggy's usual actor, Casey Kasem, was unwilling to play Shaggy in a film that depicted him eating meat. I'm not really a fan of West's portrayal of Shaggy in this movie. For whatever reason, Shaggy's voice sounds like it's been pitched up way too high in this movie, and I find it kind of grating.
For some reason, I'm still starved. Hurry up, Scoob! We're pulling out!
Every single line he says sounds like he just inhaled a gallon of helium. On the other hand, this movie features my favorite portrayal of Velma, played by B.J. Ward.
Yeah, he was printing millions of counterfeit dollars in the basement with his printing press. What we originally thought was mold was really green ink. See?
I think BJ does an excellent job of capturing Velma's brains and skepticism without making her sound all condescending like some of her other portrayals have.
You know what? I was a lot happier before I believed in ghosts.
I think this ghost didn't get sucked into the book, because he's not really a ghost at all.
After unmasking the monster, it's revealed that this intro is just a flashback that Daphne has been relating to other people on a talk show. You may notice that she looks to have been redesigned, and we quickly find out why, thanks to this woman blatantly dumping exposition here.
No wonder you became a reporter. That moat monster almost sliced you up like a pepperoni pizza, and then we wouldn't have Coast to Coast with Daphne Blake. Your very successful syndicated series on Americana, going on its second season, I might add. I never miss it.
Okay, we got it, ma'am. Don't need to explain my whole life story to me or anything.
Zombie Island takes place an unspecified number of years after the original Scooby Doo show. The gang are no longer high schoolers, but now adults who have all gone their separate ways in life. Daphne is now the star of a paranormal TV show where she debunks cases of ghosts and monsters from all around the world. Fred is a member of her crew and one of the main producers for the show. Velma is working in a bookstore, Shaggy's working in airport security, and Scooby is his drug-sniffing dog. Kind of ironic given how much of a pothead Shaggy is, but I digress. I especially love how Velma sounds just so dead inside, working her mundane job.
Solving mysteries was a lot more fun than selling them.
Back in the talk show, we see Daphne mention to the host that the gang drifted apart over the years because they grew bored of unmasking fake ghosts all the time, and she then stresses how badly she wants to find something concrete for the show's second season.
You know, the real reason I changed jobs was because the monsters and ghosts always turned out to be bad guys in a mass. But this time, I intend to find some real haunted houses for my viewers.
This gives Fred an idea. Fred manages to reunite everyone for Daphne's birthday, and then announces that he wants the gang together for the second season of the show. I think that this scene right here is probably the most important scene for understanding why Zombie Island works as the more mature story, whereas the live-action Scooby-Doo falls flat. Interestingly enough, both films begin with the gang solving a standard case, then cut ahead to when the gang has been split up for a few years, and then have the gang reunite and solve a new mystery. But whereas Zombie Island keeps the source material in mind, live-action Scooby-Doo completely throws it out the window. Right from the start, the movie is messing up the gang's roles, unsure of how to make the gang play off each other, and just all around too mean-spirited for these characters.
How are you gonna save yourself when you get caught?
I'm a black belt now. I've transformed my body into a dangerous weapon.
Did the director of the live-action film think that the gang hate each other or something? Now compare that to Zombie Island. Daphne is overjoyed to see everyone back. Look at how excited Scooby-Doo is, and who can forget how happy Velma is to finally be seeing Daphne again. Both films include a variety of jokes in their reuniting scenes, but Zombie Island understands that it doesn't necessarily have to be cruel to be funny.
I've been saving these Scooby snacks for a long time.
Look! Like too long, Velma. They're stale.
We then get a musical montage as the gang begins to explore Louisiana on the look for real monsters. I absolutely adore this song. It's really catchy and gets stuck in your head. If I had one complaint for this scene, I wish that maybe we could have seen a few minutes spent on them doing a case before the montage started. The film's runtime is very short, so I feel like expanding it just a little bit wouldn't have hurt. Regardless, I still think the scene does an excellent job for its purpose. Much like the intro, the monsters here all look a little more intense than the ones from the show. This is then balanced out by its own comedy, this time around stemming from how the gang is getting increasingly more fed up with each fake ghost they bust. The lyrics are great too, and they do a really good job to hammer in this point. But at the end of the montage, even Shaggy doesn't seem to be afraid anymore, because by this point, he knows he's fake. After the montage, we get a scene of the gang trying to decide what to do next as Daphne vents her frustrations. As they're talking, an eavesdropper listens in and makes herself known.
Thought alert! Thought alert!
This is Lena, who works as a chef in a mansion on Moonscar Island, a small island located in the bayou of Louisiana. The mansion used to oversee a pepper plantation, and Lena claims that the island is really haunted.
What do you think?
What do we have to lose? It's the best lead we've had all day.
And that Lena is kinda cute.
Don't you fall for that thought, Fred.
Velma decides to Google around for a bit and uncovers some of the history of the island.
I punched up Moonscar Island on our research database. There have been quite a few strange disappearances around that island over the years.
Prior to now, the film was making an effort to condition your mind for the darker tones the story is going to have later on. This scene here is now the first of these results, mentioning that a large number of people have gone missing over the years in the island. From here, the story is only going to get darker. Lena invites everyone to visit the mansion, so the gang heads off to Moonscar Island. As they get on the ferry, we get a strange joke where Scooby-Doo doesn't realize that he's a dog.
I didn't know you had a dog.
Dog? Where?
This is a recurring joke in this movie, but this really doesn't make sense to me. Doesn't Scooby Doo get called a dog at the end of almost every episode?
Yes, might have gotten away with it too. It wasn't for these blasted kids and their dog.
Shouldn't he know by now that he's a dog? While on the ferry, they speak with the ferry driver, Jacques, who drops some interesting backstory about how pirates used to hide in the bayou to avoid the law.
They knowed only a fool would come a-looking up in here.
We get some filler shenanigans with a catfish, but then things get serious really quickly as alligators nearly eat Shaggy and Scooby. They're rescued by a local, named Snakebite Scruggs, played by Mark Hamill. He's trying to catch the big catfish they found, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, I'm not sure what the point of this character really is. I think they want him to be a red herring in the mystery, and as motivations to try to scare tourists away.
I can't stand tourists.
But I think it falls flat because of how you barely see this character in the movie. Also, there's a little something later on, but we'll get to that. He has a hunting pig with him, which he claims is smarter than any dog, but given that Scooby-Doo can speak, I'm not 100% sure about that. They arrive on the island and, oh Jesus, I think I found who the monster really is. You know, now that I think about it, Fred's face was looking a little off at the start of the movie too. Does your Fredskin suit not fit quite right, demon? Anyways, everyone arrives at the mansion, where we find out that the owner is a crazy cat lady. Also, her cats don't really sound like cats sometimes. Fred's cohorts, perhaps? We also meet the gardener of the estate, Bo. Oh, I'm sorry, the hot gardener.
I spent a whole week on that planter.
Watching the movie for this review, I kept thinking to myself that Bo sounds like someone else. It took me a while, but I finally realized that he's played by Cam Clark, the same guy who plays Corrin in the Fire Emblem and Super Smash Bros. Games. Thank goodness he has a regular-sized neck in this movie.
I've made my choice.
We are then introduced to the owner of the mansion, Simone, who looks to me a lot like Jane Lynch from Glee. Simone reconfirms that the mansion is, in fact, haunted, and invites them for a quick tour. Immediately, Shaggy helps himself to the kitchen, without permission, asshole, where he and Scooby burn their mouths off with peppers. Simone rushes in and tells them that they have the hottest peppers in Louisiana.
I wasn't exaggerating when I said they were the hottest peppers in Louisiana.
Even though earlier she said that they were only some of the hottest peppers in Louisiana.
Some of the hottest peppers in Louisiana.
Get your story straight, Simone. Also, am I crazy, or does it sound and almost kind of look like Velma's mouth is full as they're leaving?
Maybe you guys should stay away from those peppers.
If I had one complaint for this part of the movie, it's that I feel that you don't get to see enough of the mansion. You only get small little snippets in between Shaggy and Scooby messing around and everyone else rushing back every time Shaggy and Scooby cause trouble, which really just leaves me wanting to see more of the mansion. It's a very intriguing setting, and I feel that it wasn't used to its fullest extent. Regardless, as Shaggy and Scooby continue to eat peppers, they notice something fishy happening on the wall. I really appreciate how this feels more like a general horror trope than it does a Scooby-Doo specific trope. It helps drive home the point that this film won't be your typical Scooby-Doo flair. Everyone comes running, and Daphne decides that they need to get this on camera. She looks so adorable as she brushes her hair in this scene. I know it appears to zoom in closer at Daphne's face as she's talking, but how on earth are they making a jump cut in the same shot like that? I guess the laws of filming just conveniently changed that they couldn't get the word beware being carved into the wall on camera. Shortly after, Velma's mysteriously levitated into the air. I really love how embarrassed she looks pulling her skirt down when she realizes Daphne's looking. Simone uses this to reaffirm that her mansion is, in fact, haunted, which begs the question of why she continues to live here at all with all the ghosts around like this. The gang regroups and Fred decides to play around with the video for a bit, editing it on the camera somehow? Fred, how are you doing this without a computer? And with a 1998 camera too? But anyway, they see what appears to be a ghost in the footage. Simone recognizes it and shows them a picture of the pirate, Morgan Moonscar, who resided on the island more than 300 years ago. I really like how this backstory is just enough to intrigue you without necessarily telling you too much this early on in the movie. Also, I love how Fred looks so confident and simultaneously so clueless when he starts suggesting logical explanations for everything. There is not a single thought going on in that pretty blonde head of yours, is there, Fred? Velma decides that she wants to return to the kitchen to look at the writing again. She starts to examine it and what the fuck, Velma?
Jinkies! Would you mind telling me why you destroyed half my kitchen?
To be fair, that is significantly less than half of the kitchen. They piece together that the walls of the mansion were built using parts of the pirate ship after the pirates died out, and Coach Sylvester explains how Morgan Moonscar had buried treasure on the island.
Though it was never found.
Treasure? Aha! I knew it! It's some guy disguised as a pirate ghost trying to scare everyone off the island!
Oh, Fred, never change. Having had enough of ghosts for one day, Shaggy and Scooby head outside for a picnic. There's some more filler scenes as they eat more hot peppers, Scooby chases around some cats, and then they get chased by Mark Hamill's pig. But as useless as Snakebite's character is in this movie, it's all worth it just for this one line here.
How humiliating! Chased into a hole by 1/3 of a BLT!
Shaggy and Scooby try to climb out of the pit they fell in, and... damn, that's actually kind of dark. Now, I really don't know if words can do this next scene any justice, so why don't I just give you a little nightmare fuel warning before playing it for you? Jesus fucking Christ, that's terrifying. I just witnessed rotting flesh grow over a skeleton in a Scooby fucking Doo movie. Everything about the zombie is terrifying in all the best ways. I love the way the groans sound. They're far from the goofy moans of the old TV show, but they don't sound particularly monstrous either, rather striking this nice balance where they sound oddly human. This makes sense though, given that is a rotting human after all, and really helps make the scene super unsettling. Adding to it are the stiff and robotic movements of the zombie, giving the whole thing a hardcore, uncanny valley look to it. And the best part? This entire scene takes place in broad daylight. That's right, they don't even need to use the single most basic horror trope there is to make the scene terrifying. Night of the Living Dead? More like mid-afternoon of the Living Dead. Shaggy and Scooby escape, bumping into Bo, the hot gardener again, but the zombie is mysteriously absent.
Where? I don't see anything.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bo, the angry hot gardener. The rest of the gang shows up and piece together that Shaggy and Scooby are describing the reanimated corpse of Morgan Moonscar. Velma begins to question the gardener since he was the only other person around, and for some reason when he doesn't address the gaping pit in the ground, they just let him walk away? Daphne, do you just get like distracted easily or something? Stupid angry hot gardener. Shaggy and Scooby decide that they want to leave, but Simone tells them that they can't.
The ferry doesn't run at night.
Like we do.
And she invites them to stay the night at her house. Okay, that's just a little suspicious that you're inviting the people who destroyed your kitchen to stay the night. I got my eye on you, Sue.
You'll have a beautiful view of the harvest moon tonight. I hope you'll be comfortable here.
I'll be visiting you tonight, Fred.
Oh, by the way, that's not a joke. She's actually planning to.
Ultra thought.
As the gang gets ready for dinner, there's a little bit more filler, but I really do enjoy how Shaggy's suitcase is filled with nothing but green t-shirts. And it's also kind of cute how Fred looks at his old ascot, and it's just like, nah, that's so 60s. What year does this take place in? They had the internet, but they also went to high school in the 60s? Anyways, their dressing is interrupted by this terrifying apparition. I think this film does such a great job slowly ramping up the hauntings. First, there's the writing on the walls. Then, someone levitates. And now, a full ghost appears. And while the zombie from earlier was a bit of a heavy hitter, I think it was handled well because the scene wasn't dwelled on for too long, and it does a good job making the viewer wonder what's really going on here. Had the zombie scene happened first, there would have been no build up to it. So by introducing everything one step at a time, the movie does a great job of easing the viewers into the horror instead of just slapping them in the face with the darker imagery. Additionally, the comedy slowly starts to wane itself out more and more as the plot grows more serious. The others come to investigate the ghost, and oh boy, Velma's reflection in the mirror looks huge! You know, I think that maybe I had the wrong idea about Fred before. Maybe it's Velma who's the ghost. Velma finds an inscription on the back of the mirror claiming that it was previously owned by a Civil War colonel. Simone explains how the island and mansion were briefly occupied by Confederate soldiers in the 1800s, fitting the description of the ghost that Shaggy and Scooby saw. One thing I really like here is how each of these strange occurrences has a whole history tied to it. It sets the moods and makes the haunting seem more believable. Everyone heads down for dinner, and Fred seems to be really impressed by these candles, probably because they were lit by that thought Lena. Shaggy and Scooby decide to eat outside to get away from the cats and drive off into the swamp, because that's exactly where they'd want to go after seeing a zombie in the swamp earlier. They burn their tongues off again with more peppers, causing them to dunk their heads in the swamp for a drink. Okay, first off, that's disgusting. Secondly, did you guys just forget to bring a beverage with you? Third, water doesn't actually help you when you eat something spicy. You need something like milk to break down the spices. And fourth, Jesus Christ, it's happening again! If the last zombie was terrifying, this is somehow worse than that. And no, I don't just think it's my fear of corpses in shallow water talking, although I am pretty sure that's a factor. Zombies begin to come out of fucking everywhere, and this time, there's tons of different kinds. There's pirates, soldiers, even tourists and businessmen. There's something bigger going on here. This scene is absolutely terrifying as the zombies close in at all angles, and it feels like the natural next step for all the buildup we've been seeing. The van gets stuck in the mud, causing Shaggy and Scooby to run on foot. When showing this movie to my girlfriend for the first time, she actually had a really interesting observation here, and that is how the scary things always happen to Shaggy and Scooby right after they ate the hot peppers. She was going completely blind, and she theorized that there was something up with the peppers, causing them to hallucinate. While that's not actually the case at all, I did think that was a pretty interesting prediction worth mentioning. I don't believe this was an intentional red herring or anything, but it is interesting to see what the active viewership of an adult can pick up that a child wouldn't. Okay, how many shots of this movie are going to open up with Fred eating something?
Hey, we should do a segment on Lena's pecan pie, Daph. It's supernatural.
You are so corny.
He's hopeless. He's become another victim of her thoughty ways. As the rest of the gang eats dinner, they begin discussing the mystery, tossing ideas around.
And they're probably after the pirate's treasure.
Or covering up a smuggling operation.
Or maybe there's oil under the island.
Oh, my.
And Velma is really suspicious of Bo.
Oh, he had excellent references.
They hear screaming, so they go outside to look around, coming across Bo.
You're never around when these ghosts and zombies appear.
Actually, Velma, Bo is always around. They begin to look for Shaggy and Scooby, and holy shit! Velma's eyes are the scariest thing in this movie. This confirms it. She's the real monster. But scary as or not, she's still adorable, so I appreciate the shot of her butt. Daphne and Fred find the van, and something spooky grabs Daphne's shoulder. Damn, girl! I didn't realize Daphne was so good at self-defense. All those years of training must have paid off. They meet up with Shaggy and Scooby, and Daphne moves in to unmask the zombie.
It feels real.
From all the corpses you fondle? Fred moves in to tear off the mask when Daphne can't, and this is probably my favorite scene in the movie.
No.
It's the fisherman. No, it's the ferryman. Oh, maybe it's real. Huh.
This is the heavy hitter that the movie was building up to. This time, the monsters are real. This would actually be a pretty shocking plot twist if it weren't for the fact that every single piece of advertising for this film gave it away.
Because this time, the monsters are real.
Additionally, this isn't technically the first time Scooby Doo has encountered supernatural beings, as some mediocre movies and episodes featuring Scrappy Doo also featured real monsters, and I think there was a single episode from like the 4th year of the show or something that had real genies in it, but this is the first time real monsters are taken seriously by these characters, and I feel like the characters really are reacting appropriately.
It must be animatronic.
And I suppose they're all animatronic too.
Well, it is a possibility.
You're not a skeptic, Fred. You're in denial.
I love Fred's denial in this scene. The writing and acting both really do their job to sell you on it. It's actually kind of terrifying to see them all surrounded by zombies, and if you have a keen eye, you might notice that the zombies actually appear to be from different time periods. At this point, the film is done all it can do with suspense, so it's time to go all out. And what better way to go all out than a musical chase scene? I'm sure a number of you groaned when I first said that, but hear me out. This works way better than it should. For starters, it's set to power rock instead of a cheesy pop song, which helps a lot with the mood. Secondly, the cinematography in this scene is phenomenal. The way the characters move with the moon behind them captured at such low angles gives the scene a serious music video vibe, and the song itself is really great.
And it's terror time again. They've got you running through the night. It's terror time again. And you just might die.
Lastly, this scene is kind of devoid of any comedy. Yeah, sure, there's this one scene where a zombie hands Shaggy a vine so that he can swing away, which is admittedly a classic Scooby Doo joke, but we'll get back to that in a minute. Shaggy and Scooby stumble across a cave where they find voodoo dolls? Playing with them seems to manipulate Fred, Velma, and Daphne in the real world too. They get chased away by bats, ditching the dolls, and then get chased by zombies again.
It feels like somebody wants to sell me something! I'm not interested in anything you're selling!
Fred hears Lena scream from the mansion, so they all run back to find her. They find a secret passage underneath the stairs and...
Alright.
Yeah. Thanks.
Fred, I told you not to trust that thought. Looking at his face, you can see he's long gone. Lena says that they ran to the secret passage, built to hide from soldiers during the Civil War, but the zombies followed and dragged Simone down the tunnel.
You say the zombies dragged Simone away?
I love how Velma doesn't have to over-explain what she sees here to the viewer. It's up to them to figure out what the clue means. They follow the footprints down the tunnel, and they enter what appears to be an altar room. This is when Velma accuses Lena and Simone for being full of shit with the story they told earlier.
Her story about Simone getting dragged by zombies wasn't true. I saw the footprints of Simone's heels. She wasn't dragged. She walked down that tunnel.
Very clever, Velma, but it's too late.
Simone and Lena use the voodoo dolls to trap everyone, and things start to add up.
You won't get away with this!
I've been getting away with it for 200 years.
Fred expresses hope that Shaggy and Scooby can make it out, and...
Those two simpletons? We didn't even bother making wax dolls of them! A waste of time and magic wax.
Oh, you need some ice for that burn, Scoob? Lena and Simone begin to transform into werecats? It's original, I'll give them that. As they start to explain what's going on.
Every harvest moon, I must drain the life force from victims lured to my island to preserve my immortality.
This is more haunted stuff than I really wanted.
That comment there, that's not about the werecats. That's actually a meta quote about the movie itself. You ready for something super dark, especially by Scooby Doo standards? Simone explains that she and Lena were part of a peaceful group of settlers that arrived on Moonscar Island sometime in the 1700s. One fateful night, a festival was interrupted by Morgan Moonscar and his band of pirates, who destroyed the banquet, slaughtered the settlers, and drove the survivors into the swamp where they were eaten alive by alligators. God damn. Simone and Lena escaped and prayed to their cat gods for the power to extract revenge on the pirates. They gained the ability to turn into werecats in the harvest moon every year, and with that they gained the power to drain the life force from an individual and use it to preserve their own. They then returned and slaughtered all the pirates. Holy fucking shit. They then realized that they didn't have to give up this power, and decided to use it every harvest moon to make themselves immortal, draining the lives of whatever innocent victims they could find, be it the people living in the plantation, travelers and traders, Civil War soldiers, or tourists. Motherfucker. To ensure that they always had a supply of victims, they enlisted in the help of Jacques, the ferryman, to lower people to the island and trap them here every year. Dear Lord, this is some heavy shit to be putting in a kid's film. And what makes this work is how well they commit to it. Looking back, they were foreshadowing the entire movie. Sure, Lena and Simone may have seemed a little too suspicious, but think about the other monsters. The ghosts in the mansion weren't hurting anyone. They were just trying to get the gang to leave. The zombies themselves? Sure, they were chasing everyone around trying to scare them off, but they never actually tried to hurt them. Look at how this one just gently places his hand on Daphne's shoulders. Think back to how these guys just tap Shaggy and Scooby to get their attention. You remember that scene in the music video where the zombie hands Shaggy a vine? Yeah, you thought that was a joke, remember? Nope, that was foreshadowing. Why are the zombies trying so badly to help them all? Because these were the werecats' victims from over the years. This explains their motivations as well as why they all appear to be from different time periods. Simone and Lena move in to drain the gang, and I love how they have to walk all creepy just because they're monsters now. Back on the surface, Shaggy and Scooby attempt to flee but are stopped by Jacques.
What's the matter? Cat got your tongue?
I love how even as a demonic monster of hell, Jacques still has time for puns. A group of zombies attack Jacques, buying Shaggy and Scooby time to escape. They manage to interrupt Simone and Lena, knocking the voodoo dolls near a torch. And my god, now their faces are melting? The voodoo dolls get knocked away from the torches, and Velma starts to use them to free themselves. Also, the way Daphne explains the zombies to Shaggy and Scooby is very cheesy.
Shaggy! The zombies are the good guys!
The werecats move in and actually nearly zombify Shaggy and Scooby, but some quick thinking allows Velma to make voodoo dolls of Simone and Lena, saving them. The werecats start closing in. I think it's really sweet how Fred is protecting Velma like that. And just when it looks like they're cornered, the moon moves out of the midnight position. Just like that, the curse is broken, as the werecats are unable to drain any victims this year, and... You know, I don't know what I was expecting, but it sure as hell wasn't that. How many animated films can you name with more brutal on-screen deaths than that? As the curse is broken, the zombies all turn to dust as well. It's actually kind of heartwarming when the ghost of the soldier from earlier appears for one final time.
Thank you.
Bo reveals that he's not just an angry hot gardener, but an angry hot gardener cop, which explains why he was digging that huge hole from earlier. Just a little more to the left and you would have found a body, Bo. Bo mentions that he's not sure if anyone at the station will believe the story, especially since they lost the camera, but they're all just happy to be alive. Although admittedly, I guess since Shaggy was here, that means he technically has another undercover cop to back him up, but people probably still won't believe it. With Lena gone, I can now use the thought joke on Daphne. Too bad this is like the one movie where she's not a thought.
The bayou casts a spell all its own. And no matter how hard you try to solve its mysteries, it always keeps something hidden.
Ah, so Bo is not just the angry hot gardener cop, but he is the gay angry hot gardener cop. Bo, you just keep adding new layers of complexity to yourself, don't you?
Jinkies! I've always been crazy about a good detective. Story, that is.
Now that is a no TP if I ever saw one.
Hurry up, Scoob! We're pulling out!
Shaggy, you sound so dead inside. I think maybe Simone drained your life force after all. And as the boat leaves, Scooby finds out that he's now the owner of all Simone's cats. Good thing he gets over his cat problem by the end of the credit sequence. And that was Scooby Doo on Zombie Island. Scooby Doo on Zombie Island was a movie that had all the odds stacked against it. The franchise had been dead for nearly 8 years by the time that the movie got released, and the last time the Scooby Doo tried to have any kind of serious story, we got the 13 Ghosts. So really, this film should not have been as good as it was. As stated at the beginning of this video, it is very easy for an unskilled creator to not understand what made the original tone of a series or franchise work, and thus be unable to create a smooth transition from that original tone into a new darker one. Scooby Doo on Zombie Island managed to succeed where others have failed by paying close attention to the source material, both to ensure that the characters behaved appropriately and to ensure that the fans would not be alienated. Took his time to ease the viewers into the darker tones, ensuring that no one would be turned away by a sudden mood whiplash, and actually committed to going all out with its darker themes, ensuring that the payoff would be worth all the build-up. Is this movie a masterpiece? I'm not sure I'd go that far, but did it manage to be the best piece of media thus far in the entire Scooby-Doo franchise, all while drastically shifting the tone into something significantly more mature than anything the franchise has ever done prior? I'd have to say yes, at least as far as I've seen. If you haven't seen this movie, I'm sorry for spoiling everything for you, but if you ever catch it on TV or something, you might want to check it out. You'll be in for a good time. I would like to take this time just to thank everyone for being so patient as they waited for this episode of Fishbowl to release. Going forwards, I'm pretty confident that I can get at least one episode of Fishbowl up every 2 months, so hopefully you'll be seeing the next one up sometime in April. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a thumbs up and then tell me in the comments what exactly you liked about it. It really goes a long way to help support the channel. Additionally, if you didn't like this video, that's fine too, but I ask that you please tell me why in the comments so that I can use that information to help improve my next video. I would like to thank everyone who watched the premiere live with me. Even if you participated in the chat, I would really appreciate if you were to refresh this page once this video was done and left a regular comment down in the comments below so that way everyone in the future can know exactly what you thought about this video. I would like to cover the other Scooby-Doo films eventually, but I don't think I'm going to be doing so anytime soon because I like to try to spread out content from the same franchise. That said, what Scooby-Doo movie would you like to see me cover next? Please vote in the poll by clicking the notification icon in the upper right corner of the screen to tell me what Scooby-Doo movie you think I should review next. There's a very good chance I'm probably not going to review any more Scooby-Doo movies at least for the next 6 to 8 months, but I always like to know what everyone wants when deciding on new content to create. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been Fabulous Fish, and I hope to see you all in the next Fishbowl.